There is something happening inside your legs right now that most people over the age of 60 never think about. And that is exactly why so many of them are suffering. They feel the heaviness. They notice the swelling at the end of the day. They wake up at night with that uncomfortable tingling or that dull ache that does not seem to go away. They write it off as age. They think it is just part of getting older. But here is what your doctor may not have told you: that discomfort in your legs is not just a sign of aging. It is your body sending you a signal, and that signal is about your circulation. Now, you might be thinking, circulation problems, that sounds serious. And yes, when left unaddressed, they can become serious. But here is the part that most people miss entirely. Your body already has a built-in system to protect your blood vessels, repair your circulation, and keep blood flowing the way it should. And this system can be strengthened. It can be restored. You do not have to accept poor leg circulation as an inevitable part of aging. Science tells a very different story. Let me explain why this matters so much for people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. As we age, our blood vessels naturally begin to change. The walls of our arteries and veins become a little stiffer. The muscles that help pump blood through our legs are not quite as strong as they used to be. The valves inside our leg veins, which act like little doors that keep blood moving upward toward the heart, can begin to weaken. And when any of these things happen, blood starts to move more slowly through the lower limbs. It pools. It causes pressure. It leads to that familiar feeling of tired, heavy, aching legs. But here is something remarkable that researchers have discovered over the last 2 decades. The health of your blood vessels is not fixed. It is dynamic. Your body is constantly working to maintain and repair those vessels, and it has very specific tools to do that job. One of the most important tools is a group of molecules called nitric oxide. Another is the lining of your blood vessels itself, a thin but incredibly powerful layer called the endothelium. And then there is the role of certain vitamins and nutrients that directly support the ability of this vascular system to function the way it was designed to function. When those nutrients are missing, even slightly missing, the whole system starts to break down. Most people, when they hear about leg circulation problems, immediately think about a few things. They think about moving more. They think about compression stockings. They think about magnesium supplements, because that is something that has been widely talked about for years. And magnesium does play a real role in muscle function and nerve health. We will not dismiss that. But today, we are going to talk about something that researchers have been studying very carefully, something that is far more directly connected to the health of the blood vessels in your legs, and something that the majority of American seniors are not getting nearly enough of. It is a vitamin, a very specific vitamin. And no, it is not magnesium. It is not potassium. It is not even vitamin C, although that plays a role too. The vitamin we are talking about today has a direct, scientifically documented relationship with the way your blood vessels dilate, with the way blood flows, and with the way your body builds and maintains the structure of your veins and arteries. Before we get to what that vitamin is, I want you to understand why circulation in the legs is so uniquely challenging for the human body. Think about the distance that blood has to travel. Your heart pumps blood out with tremendous force, and it reaches your legs in a matter of seconds. But then that blood has to travel all the way back up, against gravity. Every step of the way, it is fighting uphill. The veins in your legs rely on a combination of muscle contractions, one-way valves, and the pressure created by your own breathing to push that blood back toward the heart. It is an elegant system, but it requires every component to be working properly. When even one part weakens, the whole system slows down. And the consequences of that slowdown show up first in the legs, because the legs are the farthest from the heart and the most dependent on all of these mechanisms working together at the same time. What you feel as heaviness or swelling is actually fluid leaking out of blood vessels that are under too much pressure, because blood is not moving efficiently. What you feel as coldness in your feet is blood not reaching the tiny capillaries at the very ends of your circulatory system. What you feel as cramping at night is muscle tissue not getting the oxygen it needs because oxygenated blood is not flowing through fast enough. And what you may eventually feel as numbness or tingling is nerve tissue starting to react to inadequate circulation. These symptoms are not random. They are connected. And they are all telling you the same story: the vascular system needs support. Here is the good news. And I mean truly good news. Not the kind of good news that comes wrapped in a sales pitch or buried in fine print. The kind of good news that comes from real science conducted by researchers at major universities and published in peer-reviewed journals. The good news is that your vascular system responds, often quite dramatically, to the right nutritional support. The cells that line your blood vessels, those endothelial cells I mentioned earlier, are among the most responsive cells in the entire human body. They can improve their function in a matter of weeks when they receive the right inputs. And one of the most powerful inputs those cells need is something that millions of Americans, particularly Americans over the age of 60, are chronically deficient in. We are going to get into exactly what that is and why it works and what the science says about how to use it. But first, I want you to truly understand what is happening inside your blood vessels when things go wrong, because understanding the problem is the first step to solving it. When you look at the circulatory system from the outside, it looks like a network of tubes. And in a simple sense, that is what it is. Tubes carrying blood. But those tubes are alive. They are made of living cells that are constantly communicating with each other, responding to signals, producing chemicals, and making decisions about how wide or narrow to become, how much blood to allow through, and how to respond to damage or stress. The innermost layer of every blood vessel, that endothelium, is essentially the control center of circulation. It decides everything. And when it stops working properly, everything downstream suffers, including your legs. So what causes the endothelium to break down? There are several things. Chronic inflammation is one of them. High blood sugar is another. Oxidative stress, which is damage caused by unstable molecules called free radicals, plays a major role. And nutritional deficiency, particularly deficiency in specific vitamins that the endothelium needs to produce its key protective chemicals, is perhaps the most overlooked cause of all. When researchers started looking at which specific nutrient deficiencies were most strongly associated with poor vascular function in older adults, one vitamin kept rising to the top of the list. And over the next sections of this video, we are going to explore exactly what it is and why it matters so much for the health of your legs and your circulation. To really understand what is happening inside your legs when circulation starts to fail, we have to take a closer look at the biology of your blood vessels. And I promise you, this is not going to be a confusing medical lecture. This is going to be a clear explanation of something that is actually quite fascinating once you understand it. Because it shows you just how intelligent your body really is and how powerfully it can respond when it gets the right support. Let us start with the endothelium. I mentioned this word in the first part of this video, and it is worth spending a little more time here because the endothelium is truly the hero, or the villain, of this whole story, depending on how well it is being cared for. The endothelium is a single layer of cells that lines the inside of every blood vessel in your body. It is incredibly thin. If you were to peel it away from a blood vessel, it would be thinner than a single sheet of paper. And yet this thin layer is responsible for some of the most critical functions in your entire body. It regulates blood pressure. It controls how sticky the blood is and whether clots form. It decides when blood vessels should expand and when they should contract. And it produces a gas, a molecule, called nitric oxide, which is one of the most important compounds your vascular system can make. Nitric oxide is extraordinary. When your endothelial cells produce nitric oxide, it signals the smooth muscle cells surrounding your blood vessels to relax. And when those muscles relax, the blood vessels widen. This process is called vasodilation. And vasodilation is exactly what needs to happen for blood to flow freely through your legs. When your blood vessels are dilated, blood moves easily. Oxygen gets delivered to the tissues. Waste products get carried away. The pressure inside the veins stays manageable. Fluid does not build up in the tissues. Everything works the way it should. But here is what happens when nitric oxide production declines. When the endothelium is stressed or inflamed or nutritionally deprived, it produces less nitric oxide. And when nitric oxide drops, the smooth muscles around your blood vessels do not relax as easily. The vessels stay narrower. Blood has to squeeze through under higher pressure. The heart has to work harder. The veins in your legs, already struggling against gravity, now have to push blood through vessels that are not dilating properly. The result is exactly what you feel: heaviness, pressure, swelling, poor circulation, cold feet, leg cramps, and all the other symptoms that come with vascular dysfunction in the lower limbs. Now, what does this have to do with a specific vitamin? Everything. Because the production of nitric oxide by your endothelial cells is not a simple process that just happens automatically. It depends on a cascade of chemical reactions, and those reactions require specific cofactors, meaning specific nutrients, to work properly. Remove those nutrients, and the nitric oxide factory inside your blood vessels slows down or shuts down entirely. One of the most critical of those nutrients is something your body cannot make on its own. It has to come from your diet, or from supplementation, or from one very reliable natural source that most people over 60 are simply not getting enough of. That source is sunlight, and the nutrient is vitamin D. Yes, vitamin D, not magnesium, not potassium, not vitamin B12, vitamin D. And before you say, "Oh, I already know about vitamin D," I want you to hold on, because the relationship between vitamin D and leg circulation goes so much deeper than most people realize. This is not just about bone health. This is not just about preventing osteoporosis. The research on vitamin D and vascular function is some of the most compelling science in the field of cardiovascular and circulatory medicine right now, and most people, including many doctors, have not fully caught up to it yet. Here is what the science shows. Vitamin D receptors exist in endothelial cells. That means your blood vessel lining is specifically designed to respond to vitamin D. When vitamin D binds to these receptors, it influences the production of nitric oxide. It reduces inflammation within the vessel walls. It inhibits the proliferation of smooth muscle cells that can make vessels stiffer. It regulates the activity of the renin-angiotensin system, which is a major controller of blood pressure and fluid balance. And it supports the production of a molecule called prostacyclin, which helps keep blood from becoming too thick and keeps small blood vessels open and flowing properly. Research published in major cardiology and hypertension journals has shown that people with low vitamin D levels have significantly higher rates of peripheral arterial disease, which is a condition where blood flow to the legs is reduced due to narrowed arteries. Other studies have shown that low vitamin D is associated with higher levels of inflammatory markers in the blood, with stiffer arteries, with reduced endothelial function, and with a higher risk of developing the kinds of vascular complications that lead directly to leg pain, swelling, ulcers, and in severe cases, much more serious outcomes. The association is not mild. In many studies, people in the lowest quartile of vitamin D status have double or even triple the risk of significant vascular dysfunction compared to people in the highest quartile. And here is the part that should alarm you and motivate you at the same time. Studies conducted across the United States consistently show that more than 40% of American adults are vitamin D deficient. But when you narrow that down to adults over the age of 60, the numbers are even more striking. Some estimates suggest that as many as 70% of older Americans do not have adequate vitamin D levels. And there are very clear reasons why this happens. First, as we age, our skin becomes less efficient at producing vitamin D from sunlight. A person over the age of 60 produces about 4 times less vitamin D from the same amount of sun exposure as a person in their 20s. Second, many older adults spend less time outdoors than they used to, particularly in northern states where sunlight is weaker for much of the year. Third, vitamin D is found in very few foods naturally, and even people who eat a relatively balanced diet often struggle to get enough from food alone. Let us also talk about how vitamin D works in relation to inflammation, because this is another critical piece of the puzzle. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the primary drivers of vascular damage. When the walls of your blood vessels are chronically inflamed, they become thicker and stiffer. The endothelial cells become dysfunctional. The valves in your veins weaken more quickly, and the inflammatory chemicals circulating in your blood make the blood itself thicker and more likely to form small clots that impede flow. Vitamin D has well-documented anti-inflammatory effects. It suppresses the activity of inflammatory molecules called cytokines. It activates immune cells called regulatory T cells that help keep inflammation under control. And it reduces the activity of a process called nuclear factor, kappa B, which is essentially the master switch for inflammation at the cellular level. When vitamin D levels are restored to an adequate range, many of these inflammatory processes quiet down. And when inflammation quiets down in the blood vessel walls, circulation improves. There is also fascinating research on vitamin D and what is called venous tone, meaning the ability of the veins in your legs to maintain a certain level of tension that helps push blood upward. Veins are not just passive tubes. They have smooth muscle cells in their walls that can contract and relax, and the degree to which they do so determines how efficiently blood moves back toward the heart. Research suggests that vitamin D plays a role in maintaining the tone of these venous smooth muscles, which means that adequate vitamin D may directly support the mechanical ability of your leg veins to do their job. When this tone is lost, which happens more easily when vitamin D is deficient, the veins become floppier, blood moves more slowly, and you get that characteristic pooling and pressure that causes swelling in the ankles and lower legs. Now, I also want to address something that comes up frequently when people start researching vitamin D: the question of how much is actually deficient versus adequate. This matters enormously because the standard reference range used in many clinical labs defines deficiency as a blood level below 20 nanograms per milliliter. But a growing body of research suggests that truly optimal vascular function may require levels significantly above that. Many experts in vascular and cardiovascular medicine now suggest that levels between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter are associated with the best outcomes for blood vessel health. And yet the average older American is often sitting somewhere between 15 and 25 nanograms per milliliter, technically within what some labs call the acceptable range, but far below where the vascular system actually thrives. This is why so many older adults are walking around feeling like their legs are failing them, even when a standard blood panel comes back without any obvious red flags. The problem is not always something catastrophic showing up on a test. The problem is often a quiet, gradual insufficiency, a slow decline in the nutrients that the vascular system depends on, that builds up over years until the symptoms become impossible to ignore. And the most frustrating part is that this is something that can often be addressed. Not always completely and not always quickly, but with the right approach, the right nutritional support, and the right lifestyle habits, the body has a remarkable ability to restore circulation and rebuild vascular function. Let me tell you how in the next section. We have established that vitamin D plays a central role in the health of your blood vessels and the circulation in your legs. But I want to go even deeper into the science here, because I think once you truly understand the mechanisms involved, you will appreciate just how important this nutrient is, and you will understand why getting it right can make such a meaningful difference in how your legs feel every single day. Let us talk about the endothelial glycocalyx. This sounds complicated, but bear with me, because it is one of the most fascinating structures in the human body, and it is almost never talked about outside of academic research settings. The endothelial glycocalyx is a thin, gel-like coating that sits on top of the endothelial cells, those cells lining the inside of your blood vessels. Think of it like a protective cushion or a fuzzy layer that covers the surface of every blood vessel. This glycocalyx serves as a critical interface between the blood flowing through your vessels and the vessel wall itself. It acts as a barrier that prevents blood components from sticking to the vessel wall, It helps regulate how fluid and nutrients pass in and out of the bloodstream. It plays a major role in protecting the vessel from inflammation and oxidative damage. And it is a key regulator of how nitric oxide is produced. Here is the connection to vitamin D. Research published in recent years has shown that vitamin D has a protective effect on the endothelial glycocalyx. When vitamin D levels drop, the glycocalyx becomes thinner and more fragile. And when the glycocalyx breaks down, all of the protective functions it provides are lost. The vessel wall becomes more exposed to inflammatory molecules. Nitric oxide production declines. The blood becomes stickier and more prone to creating sluggish flow. And circulation in the legs, the area most dependent on every part of the vascular system working correctly, suffers the consequences first and most visibly. This helps explain why restoring vitamin D to adequate levels can sometimes produce noticeable improvements in how the legs feel within just a few weeks. It is not magic, it is biology. The glycocalyx begins to repair itself. The endothelial cells begin to produce nitric oxide more efficiently. The smooth muscles around the blood vessels relax more readily. Blood flows more freely. Swelling decreases. The heaviness lifts. The aching at night becomes less intense. People say it feels like their legs are coming back to life, and in a very real biological sense, they are. Now, let us also talk about vitamin D's relationship with something called the EEDOS enzyme. This is the enzyme responsible for producing nitric oxide inside your endothelial cells. The full name is endothelial nitric oxide synthase, but the important thing to understand is that this enzyme needs to be activated in order to do its job. And research has shown that vitamin D directly upregulates, meaning it turns up the activity of eNOS in endothelial cells. Without sufficient vitamin D, eNOS activity decreases. Nitric oxide production falls, and the downstream effects ripple through the entire vascular system, with the legs being among the first places where those effects become apparent. There is also a very important relationship between vitamin D and the parathyroid hormone, which is abbreviated as PTH. When vitamin D levels fall, the parathyroid glands, 4 tiny glands in your neck, compensate by producing more PTH. And elevated PTH levels have been associated with vascular stiffness, higher blood pressure, and reduced blood flow to the extremities. So vitamin D deficiency creates a cascade. Low vitamin D leads to high PTH. High PTH contributes to vascular stiffness, and vascular stiffness impairs circulation in the legs. Restoring vitamin D breaks that cascade. PTH comes down. The stiffness begins to ease. Circulation improves. It is a logical, science-backed chain of events, not a theory. Let us also address the relationship between vitamin D and the immune system in the context of vascular health. One of the lesser-known ways that circulation in the legs can be compromised is through a process called immune-mediated vascular inflammation. This is when immune cells, specifically macrophages and certain types of T cells, infiltrate the walls of blood vessels and trigger an inflammatory response that damages the vessel wall from the inside. This kind of inflammation is increasingly recognized as a driver of both peripheral arterial disease and chronic venous insufficiency, two of the most common causes of leg circulation problems in older adults. Vitamin D plays a regulatory role in this immune process. It helps keep the immune response balanced, reducing the tendency of immune cells to overreact and cause inflammatory damage in blood vessel walls. Studies have found that people with low vitamin D levels have higher levels of inflammatory macrophage activity in their vascular tissues. And research in both animal models and human trials has shown that raising vitamin D levels reduces these inflammatory markers and improves vascular function. This is part of why vitamin D supplementation has been associated in multiple studies with reduced leg pain, improved walking distance, and better overall lower limb circulation in people with peripheral vascular disease. I also want to draw your attention to something called endothelial progenitor cells, which are a type of stem cell that the body uses to repair damaged blood vessel walls. When a part of your vascular lining is damaged, whether by inflammation, oxidative stress, or physical injury, endothelial progenitor cells are recruited from the bone marrow, travel through the bloodstream, and arrive at the site of damage to help rebuild the vessel wall. This repair system is absolutely essential for maintaining the long-term health of your circulation. And here is what is remarkable. Vitamin D directly stimulates the production and function of endothelial progenitor cells. Research has shown that people with higher vitamin D levels have more circulating endothelial progenitor cells, and that those cells are more effective at carrying out vascular repair. People with low vitamin D, on the other hand, have fewer of these repair cells and slower vascular healing. This means that vitamin D deficiency does not just impair current vascular function, it also compromises the body's ability to repair and maintain the vascular system over time. Think about what that means for an older adult who has been subtly deficient in vitamin D for years or even decades. Their blood vessels have been getting damaged by inflammation, by oxidative stress, by the normal wear and tear of aging. And all the while, the repair system has been under-resourced. The cells that should be arriving to fix the damage are not showing up in sufficient numbers. The walls of the blood vessels become increasingly compromised. The circulation in the legs deteriorates slowly year after year, until finally the symptoms become impossible to ignore. This is not inevitable aging. This is the consequence of a repairable deficiency. One more critical connection worth exploring is between vitamin D and what happens to your blood in the veins of your legs specifically. Deep in the large veins of the calves and thighs, blood can sometimes move too slowly, especially in people who are sedentary, who have poor circulation, or whose vein valves are not functioning well. When blood moves too slowly, it becomes more prone to clotting. This is one of the reasons why conditions like deep vein thrombosis, blood clots in the deep veins of the legs, are more common in older adults and in people with circulatory problems. Research has shown that vitamin D has anti-thrombotic properties, meaning it helps prevent the formation of these dangerous blood clots. It does this partly by regulating the expression of tissue factor, which is a protein involved in clot formation, and partly by supporting the activity of proteins in the natural anticoagulation system. People with very low vitamin D levels have been found in several studies to have higher rates of deep vein thrombosis, and correcting vitamin D deficiency may reduce that risk. This is not to say that vitamin D is a treatment for blood clots. It is not, and anyone dealing with a blood clot needs proper medical care. But it is to say that maintaining adequate vitamin D is one of the things your body needs to keep the blood in your legs flowing smoothly and safely, and that deficiency in this vitamin creates vulnerabilities in the vascular system that extend far beyond just feeling tired or achy. The science here is compelling, the mechanisms are understood, and the solution is within reach. Let us talk now about what that solution looks like in practical terms. Understanding the science is one thing. Knowing what to actually do about it is where the real value lies. So in this part of our conversation, we are going to get practical. We are going to talk about how to restore vitamin D levels, how to support your vascular system through food and lifestyle choices, and how to combine these strategies for the best possible outcome when it comes to the health of your legs and your circulation. The first thing to understand about vitamin D is that there are 3 ways the body can get it: through sunlight, through food, and through supplementation. Each of these has its place, and for most older Americans, a combination of all 3 is going to be the most effective approach. Let us start with sunlight, because this is the way the human body was originally designed to obtain vitamin D. When ultraviolet B rays from the sun hit the skin, they trigger a chemical reaction that converts a cholesterol-like compound in the skin into a precursor of vitamin D, which then travels to the liver and kidneys to be converted into the active form of the vitamin. This process is elegant and efficient when it works. The problem, as I mentioned earlier, is that aging significantly reduces the skin's ability to perform this conversion. A person in their late 60s or 70s produces far less vitamin D from the same sun exposure than a younger person. Additionally, the amount of vitamin D produced from sunlight depends heavily on several other factors: the angle of the sun, which changes dramatically with latitude and season, the amount of skin exposed, whether sunscreen is used, and skin pigmentation, with darker skin producing less vitamin D from sun exposure than lighter skin. For older Americans living in northern states, anywhere above about the 37th parallel, which runs roughly through San Francisco, Albuquerque, and Richmond, Virginia, there is essentially no meaningful vitamin D production from sunlight for 3 to 5 months of the year, from approximately November through March. Even in sunnier southern states, sun angle, time spent outdoors, and age-related skin changes mean that most older adults are not getting nearly enough vitamin D from sunlight alone. So while getting moderate sun exposure on the arms and legs for 15 to 20 minutes in the midday sun during warmer months is still beneficial and worth doing, it is not a complete solution for most older adults. Now let us talk about food. Vitamin D naturally occurs in very few foods. The best natural sources are fatty fish. Salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring are among the richest. Wild-caught salmon is particularly notable, with a single serving providing several hundred international units of vitamin D. Canned sardines are another excellent and affordable option that also provides omega-3 fatty acids, which have their own vascular benefits that we will get to in a moment. Egg yolks contain small amounts of vitamin D, particularly from pasture-raised chickens that spend time in sunlight. And certain mushrooms, particularly those that have been exposed to UV light, can provide meaningful amounts of vitamin D in a plant-based form. In the United States, several foods are also fortified with vitamin D, including most commercial milk, many plant-based milk alternatives, some orange juices, and certain cereals. However, the amounts added through fortification are generally modest, typically around 400 international units per serving, and may not be sufficient to meaningfully raise blood levels in someone who is significantly deficient. Consuming a diet rich in natural sources of vitamin D is still important, and these foods should be included regularly. But for most older adults, food alone, even with fortified products, is unlikely to bring vitamin D levels into the optimal range for vascular health. This brings us to supplementation. Vitamin D supplements are among the most studied dietary supplements in the world, and the research on their safety and effectiveness is extensive. For older adults looking to support circulatory health, most experts in vascular and preventive medicine suggest aiming for blood levels of vitamin D in the range of 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter, well above the official deficiency threshold of 20 nanograms per milliliter, but also well within safe, non-toxic levels. To achieve this, many older adults benefit from a daily supplement of between 2,000 and 4,000 international units of vitamin D3. That is the D3 form, cholecalciferol, which is the same form the body produces from sunlight and which research consistently shows is more effective at raising blood levels than the D2 form. However, I want to be very clear here, before starting any supplement, and especially before taking higher doses, it is important to have your vitamin D level checked with a simple blood test. This test is called a 25-hydroxyvitamin D test, and it is widely available from any standard laboratory. Knowing your baseline level allows you and your doctor to determine the appropriate supplementation dose, and it gives you a way to track your progress and make sure your levels are moving into the optimal range. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, which means it can accumulate in the body, and while toxicity is quite rare and generally only seen with very high doses taken over long periods, it is still important to use supplements thoughtfully and with appropriate monitoring. One more important point about vitamin D supplementation: it works best when taken with vitamin K2. This is a crucial detail that many people and even many healthcare providers overlook. Vitamin K2 is a companion nutrient that helps ensure the calcium that vitamin D helps absorb ends up in the right places, the bones and teeth, rather than in the walls of the blood vessels. Calcium deposited in arterial walls is one of the mechanisms that makes arteries stiffer over time, a condition called arterial calcification. Vitamin K2 activates proteins that prevent this calcification and help keep calcium properly distributed. So when supplementing with vitamin D for vascular health, including a source of vitamin K2, either through diet, in fermented foods like natto or certain cheeses, or through a supplement that combines D3 and K2, is an important consideration. Now let us talk about the other nutritional and lifestyle factors that support leg circulation alongside vitamin D. Because while vitamin D is the central focus of today's discussion, vascular health is always a team effort. The body needs multiple nutrients, multiple lifestyle inputs, and multiple daily habits working together to keep the circulatory system functioning at its best. Omega-3 fatty acids are among the most well-documented supporters of vascular health. Found in fatty fish, flax seeds, walnuts, and chia seeds, omega-3s reduce inflammation in the blood vessel walls, improve the flexibility of red blood cells so they can squeeze through tiny capillaries more easily, and reduce the tendency of blood to become too viscous and sluggish. Research has consistently shown that regular consumption of omega-3 fatty acids is associated with better endothelial function, lower levels of inflammatory markers, and improved blood flow in the lower extremities. Nitrate-rich vegetables are another powerful tool for vascular health, and their mechanism is beautifully connected to everything we have discussed about nitric oxide. Foods like beets, leafy greens, arugula, spinach, and Swiss chard are rich in dietary nitrates, which the body converts through a two-step process. First in the mouth with the help of beneficial bacteria, and then in the bloodstream into nitric oxide. Eating more of these foods directly increases the amount of nitric oxide available to dilate your blood vessels and improve blood flow. Research studies using beetroot juice have shown measurable improvements in blood flow, blood pressure, and exercise capacity, particularly in older adults. Adding a daily serving of beets or a generous portion of leafy greens to your diet is one of the most direct dietary choices you can make for your leg circulation. Berries deserve special mention here because of their extraordinarily high content of polyphenols, plant chemicals that have direct effects on blood vessel health. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries contain compounds called anthocyanins that protect the endothelial glycocalyx we discussed earlier, reduce oxidative stress in blood vessel walls, improve nitric oxide production, and reduce arterial stiffness. Research conducted at prestigious institutions has found that regular berry consumption is associated with better vascular function and lower risk of circulatory problems. The good news is that frozen berries are just as beneficial as fresh ones, making them an affordable year-round option. Dark chocolate, specifically chocolate with 70% or more cocoa content, contains flavonols that have been shown to improve endothelial function and increase nitric oxide production. A small amount daily, about 20 to 30 grams, is enough to provide meaningful vascular benefits without adding excessive sugar or calories. Green tea is another source of powerful polyphenols called catechins, which research has shown improve blood vessel function, reduce inflammation, and support healthy circulation. On the lifestyle side, regular physical movement is absolutely essential for leg circulation. The muscles of the calves and thighs act as a secondary pump for the venous system, squeezing blood upward with every contraction. This is why sitting for long periods of time is so harmful to leg circulation. The pump stops working, blood pools, pressure builds, and all the symptoms of poor circulation worsen. Even short walks, just 10 to 15 minutes 2 or 3 times a day, activate this muscle pump system and dramatically improve venous return. Swimming and water aerobics are particularly beneficial because the pressure of the water itself helps push blood out of the lower legs, providing a natural compression effect. Yoga and stretching exercises that involve elevating the legs can also provide relief by using gravity to help blood drain back toward the heart. Hydration is another factor that many older adults underestimate in relation to circulation. When the body is dehydrated, the blood becomes thicker and more viscous, making it harder to move through the vessels. Older adults frequently experience a diminished sense of thirst, which means they may be chronically mildly dehydrated without realizing it. Aiming for at least 6 to 8 glasses of water per day, more in warm weather or when physically active, helps maintain the proper consistency of the blood and supports optimal circulation throughout the body, including the legs. Sleep is also deeply connected to vascular health in ways that are not immediately obvious. During deep sleep, the body does a significant portion of its vascular repair and maintenance work. Blood pressure naturally drops during sleep, giving the cardiovascular system a period of reduced stress. The endothelial cells repair themselves. Inflammatory processes are modulated, and hormones that support vascular function are released. Chronic sleep deprivation, including the fragmented, lighter sleep that many older adults experience, disrupts all of these processes and contributes to vascular decline. Prioritizing good sleep hygiene, including consistent sleep and wake times, a cool and dark sleeping environment, and avoiding screens in the hour before bed, is an underappreciated but genuinely important strategy for long-term vascular health. We have covered a great deal of science in this video. We have talked about the endothelium and nitric oxide and why the legs are so uniquely vulnerable to circulation problems. We have explored the deep and multifaceted relationship between vitamin D and vascular health. And we have seen how this one nutrient influences everything from the protective glycocalyx on your blood vessel walls to the production of the molecule that allows your vessels to dilate and carry blood freely. We have talked about the role of inflammation, about endothelial progenitor cells and vascular repair, and about how a quiet, long-standing vitamin D deficiency can create a cascade of vascular problems that show up first, and most clearly, in the legs. And then we looked at what you can actually do about it. The foods that support your vascular system. The nutrients that work alongside vitamin D. The lifestyle choices that keep blood moving through your legs the way it was designed to move. And the importance of getting that simple blood test so you know where you stand and can make informed decisions with your doctor. But I want to close this video with something even more important than any individual piece of information we have covered. I want to talk about the broader principle that underlies all of it, because I think this principle is one of the most empowering ideas in all of modern health science. Your body is not simply aging and declining. Your body is constantly defending itself, repairing itself, and striving to maintain balance and function. Every single day, your endothelial cells are working to keep your blood vessels healthy. Every single day, your endothelial progenitor cells are patrolling your vascular system looking for areas that need repair. Every single day, your immune system is working to keep inflammation under control. And every single day, your body is making decisions about how much nitric oxide to produce, how widely to dilate your blood vessels, and how efficiently to move blood through your legs.